how's that for an epic introduction to everything we got going on tonight? Probably could have used that music on the high road on Saturday evening. It feels like a little bit. Either way, we will fade that out. He says clicking the button and getting rid of that. Let's hit the big button. Hey! Definitely needed some water there. The lesson here, folks, is homemade Biscoff and white chocolate chip muffins that the wife has made are delicious. But eating one just before you come live made my mouth just, like, it's really delicious, but my mouth just kind of tasted nothing but Biscoff at this precise moment in time. So not my best of moods. We'll give people a moment just to make sure folk are slowly trickling their way in. Because of Docky that we all need to do. Like I say, a few people saying fingers for toes. I'm always stuck on this question purely because I'm one of those people who can pick a lot of things up with my toes. I'm one of those weird people who can, who seems to be a proper sort of human, sort of human monkey. I can kind of manipulate things with my hands and my feet, which is a thing I can do. Either way, as folk are trickling their way in, he says, forgetting about one place he's. No, that's a notification about something else. There's me thinking, what's that thing flashing up on my phone? It's just because a friend of mine's gone live on Twitch. But there we go. Right. He says, looking at the time. Time to get to it. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night. It is 8 PM and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current Stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to bring you through the wild, weird and wonderful world that is the National Ice Hockey League structure here in Great Britain. We focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter. That is our home port. But of course, we're here to go through absolutely anything and everything that happened from the National as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the North and in the Bay. And the big one, the big news really coming out of Hull. The Seahawks this morning, head coach Matty Davis releasing Bobby Young from his contract, tracking it just below a point per game pace, but clearly not what the doctor ordered in Hull, especially with that cup semi-final coming up before too long, with a big run in sight. And let's face it, given how Owen Sobchuk, released by Bristol towards the beginning of the season, came back 22-23 with the Pitbulls, was the Pitbulls captain, then had a really rough start to the year, got himself suspended and was released with basically half a paragraph's worth of news. Nothing ever 100% confirmed in public as to why Sobchuk ended up leaving, but of course this season has been a bit of a disaster piece for the Pitbulls in terms of their form, in terms of their results, in terms of everything that's kind of going on ice, although they obviously have picked up a little bit in recent weeks. But the former Pitbulls captain has now flown north, as it were. He'd already been in Sweden for a little while since his release by Bristol, but now he will be the next piece in the Seahawks puzzle at Hull. Now, Young, natural centre. Sobchuk, natural centre. Really easy to chuck that one in there. That's obviously the big bit of headline news that we've had today, and we'll get on with the rest of the stuff in a minute. Because of course, what we'll do is we'll of course talk about the other bits that we need to, because I've launched straight into the news without even welcoming folk in. So hello, welcome to the BOTW What's Current Stream as always. Let's quickly take care of the housekeeping calls. Banners on the wall at WordPress.com. Your number one source for all things related to the National Division. Banners on the road in my journey this year across hockey, wherever I may find it. And of course, I am going to talk about Solent Junior Devils and the Lee Valley Lions at length when we get to South 2 in a little bit. But that's the latest piece from there. Tons of stuff over on the website. Go check that out. And of course, you're live on YouTube. Check out all the links in the description below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's keep pushing things on. But this is a live show. It's not a monologue, it's a discussion, which means, if you look over there, you've got the chat function. And that means that you can chuck in your thoughts, feelings, questions and queries and everything you want to chuck into it. But of course, if you are using the chat, please do remember the golden rule here at BOTW. That is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings. And everyone's going to have a great time. And so, yeah, as we talked about there, the big headline news tonight, Hull really changing, making a big change of direction there and bringing Owen Sobchuk into the fold. For me, We're going to see this man alongside Bobby Chamberlain a lot. But not the only piece of signing news this week, because of course we had news out of the Telford Tigers today as well. The recent release of Zane McKenzie, his two-way contract with the Tigers ending. McKenzie has spent the weekend with the Nottingham Panthers. Saw about as much ice time as a snowball sees on a barbecue. But what it's meant is that they've made a little bit. They have made a little bit of a move, and they welcomed back Aidan Wilson. Now, Aidan Wilson played for them last season. He was on a two-way contract between the Tigers and the North Air Bruins in the Scottish National League, and he spent a chunk of this season with the Nybro Vikings in Sweden. But now he has returned back to Britain. Just looking here as well, he played with Sollefteå in the under 18s league. There, 24 points in 14 games. Obviously been part of the GB under 18 setup as well, has Wilson, and it's just a really solid additional depth option for Tommy Watkins at the moment, because I think we all know the title is pretty much going to be a 2-horse race now, all things considered. Potentially 3 if another team wants to claw their way back into it, and it's looking like potentially Swindon could be that team. But the playoffs are still very much up for grabs. That 2-group format, of course, more than capable of springing a few surprises for teams. And of course, Leeds and MK are in the cup semi-finals, but so are Swindon and Hull. Obviously, we've seen Hull make this big change in the hope of sort of generating additional offence as they head into what will be a big series of games with the Knights. And now Telford, of course, the playoffs are not out of their question, or at least making Coventry definitely not out of the grasp of the Tigers. They have their form. They've had good stretches, they've had less good stretches. But what Wilson now provides with McKenzie, who never quite settled, chopped and changed around the lines a lot. Wilson is going to come in, knows how Watkins coaches, knows a lot of the guys there already, should hopefully be able to slot in and be able to provide an additional bit of depth and a little bit of additional scoring as well. We've seen here in that Swedish under-18s league, very, very high quality league. But and so what he can hopefully do is translate some of those lessons learned in Scandinavia back into the national division and help out the Tigers going forward. Oh, apologies there. Just tried to talk and just nothing came out of my mouth. Let's have a swig of water. Have the tickets been for the playoffs at Coventry been released yet? They have not, Niall. My understanding, and I've not had it confirmed 100%. Wait towards the end of this month is when I believe, or at least in my brain, it makes sense for the playoff tickets to be released. You don't want to release them too late because obviously that will cause a problem with people getting things like accommodation. The big issue for playoffs this year, of course, is that playoff final Sunday is going to be the same day as the Coventry Marathon, so that's going to put make a bit of a sticky situation for a few things and a few people, especially folk like me who stay just out of the city centre and have to come into it. I'm going to have to plan where I'm going to park my car. My hope being that I'll be able to that I'll be able on the Sunday. Just seen what's our good friend at NHL Stats. See more moves, of course, out of Leeds. I mean, they've obviously about it. And then of course they've you know what, I'm having an absolute mare here, and I've completely forgotten his name. What's his? I've completely forgotten who they bought back. Jake Witkowski. Jeez, dearie me. Just having an absolute nightmare and just completely forgot who Jake Witkowski is. Sorry, Jake. But yeah, obviously that big change as well for the Knights. As obviously Boyd fans, people were really, really big on Witkowski when he joined. When he joined last season, big part in the title charge as well. So that's obviously been really, really big for them. Will we see other teams start to make moves? Not expecting a massive amount of movement out of Swindon because they never do. Will we? Obviously, Hull have pulled their trigger on bits and pieces like that. Peterborough, of course, they've made a few sort of smaller depth moves, of course, and the sort of stepping away on a sort of retirement of Martin Susters. We've seen Ralph Sasenis come back into the fold. We've seen Connor Glossop added into the lineup recently as well. And we've seen all of the furore happening at the Sheffield Steel Dogs. Now, obviously, things have gone quite quiet out of the Dogs since last week, where we saw the retirement of Tim Smith, or at least Tim Smith stepping away. as it were, and Jack Brammer announcing that he's not playing because he wants to leave and go to Division 1 in the North. Oh dear, we seem to be having a bit of an issue here, don't we? There's a lot of drop frames. Chris, yes, there seems to be a tiny bit of an issue at the moment. Hopefully folk can hear me. But yeah, certainly there's a lot of dropped frames going on at the moment, which is slowly working its way back down. So hopefully I've come back to life, as it were, on that front. I'm not quite sure what has happened there. My connection is okay. Everything seems to be all right on the connection. Interesting, that one. Yeah, apologies about that, folks. Not quite sure what's happened there. It's freezing a bit again. I'm getting a lot of frame rate droppage, actually. What we're going to do as we're talking... Not sure what's happening here at all. Any news on Brammer getting a move? No, there's no extra news at the moment about Jack Brammer's request to leave the Steel Dogs. He's still a Steel Dogs player as of this moment. Of course, Brammer did mention last week about the issue that he was having, namely that there is a buyout clause in his contract to move to another team in Britain, or I believe actually technically that clause will extend into Europe as well. But certainly, if he wants to. Brammer played the weekend. I mean, he certainly did, but certainly his desire, he's made it very, very clear that he wants to leave. And potentially maybe they've agreed a notice period of sorts with him in that kind of case. So we will see how long Jack Brammer stays with the Sheffield Steel Dogs. There's obviously been no new people leaving, although there have been rumblings, of course, about other players potentially wanting to leave the Dogs. Nothing is concrete. It's all rumour until everything is confirmed. But it wouldn't surprise me, particularly as well, given this announcement from Tony Smith, where he talked about a few bits and pieces during the week. Because obviously Neil Abel has been added to the bench coaching staff for the Dogs. Talked about, and it didn't sit very well with me, as you will probably appreciate. I've not been a big supporter, a big fan of Tony Smith and some of the things that he said. The Steel Dogs release that they kind of talked about things, and I'll just bring it up now just whilst we're chatting, didn't sit brilliantly with me. I get what they're trying to say. I think they've used the wrong words, I think is probably the best way I can describe it. So where is because they were talking about a few bits and pieces, they're talking about a bunch of different players. Obviously about Neil Abel joining the Steel Dogs bench. Just trying to find the bit in the press release here, so apologies for this. Not our slickest of shows so far. Technical problems, and me unable to function as a human, apparently. Here we are. Yeah. Smith went on to explain recent happenings at the club. The first year was always going to be a difficult period, with us coming in late in the summer when the club needed saving to ensure its survival and continue to the National League level. I think I've said before, it reminded me of when we first were involved with the Steelers over a decade ago. These are big clubs that need time to turn around and head in a new direction. Not an unreasonable thing in and of itself, of course. I think everybody has kind of given the Steel Dogs a bit of a mulligan on this season, given everything that happened in the summer. So continuing with Smith here, with the Steelers, we asked for trust from the fans and received it in bucket loads. Whilst we then had little experience in running a hockey club, the people at the Steelers knew we had good intentions and the club at heart. This time with the Dogs, we have experience and the national programme. Therefore, there will be a change both on and off the ice. We want to add the Steelers' work ethic, experience and professional DNA into the Dogs programme and create a pathway for those youngsters in the academy. I understand that it is sometimes hard for fans to accept change, but I give you my word that we have the club's best interest at heart here and to create a long-term project that they can support and be proud of. Now, the problem for me there is that feels very much like we know what we're doing, don't question us. And I'm always a little bit suspect when people are that sure about what they're doing, because I hate to kind of break it to folks, but the Sheffield Steelers and the Sheffield Steel Dogs are not the same thing, and you can't run a team, you can't run a National League team in exactly the same way as you would an Elite League team. And we spoke last week as well about this issue of like making sure that those guys who have put in time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, tears into the dogs, that they get that opportunity to, to go off gracefully, as it were. Really clear there. And we talked about this last week too. Really clear that the Steel Dogs, are in a change direction mode. They are going to move towards being a younger team, more development oriented. But the big problem for me is that they're just, there's so many guys who've been there for so long, and making that lurching change mid-season, aside from the fact that it's clearly not working very well right now, you've got all of these guys who have put in all this time and effort, and they're not being dealt with in the right way. And that's the thing I think that, like I say, will probably irk a few people, and it certainly irks me looking at it from the outside. Like, if you want these guys, this is a change for the summer. This is not a change for now. You want to talk about making the club more professional, bringing some of that Steelers DNA into it. You own the club, mate. You do what you need to do. You can still do it the right way. Remains to be seen whether more folk will leave the Dogs. Obviously, when Hull talked about the fact they were signing an import, everybody immediately went, at least 5 or 6 people said to me, oh, it's Matt Bissonnette. It obviously wasn't Matt Bissonnette. It was Owen Sobchak. But but obviously there is a lot of feeling and talk that there is going to be more people off the bus before there are more people on it. And obviously we are seeing some of these older guys slowly being phased out, and younger guys getting the ice time, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. But I think there needs to be a realistic kind of conversation out loud and saying, we're moving in this direction. Say it clearly, I think is probably the thing I say. And I appreciate that sounds really silly coming from me today, because I'm tripping over my words every 5 minutes. But you can do right by people and make the tough decisions. That's all I'm saying. And like I said it last week, I'll say it again. Tony, mic's open. You want to come talk to someone? You want to come have those discussions in public a bit in the NIHL? Doors open, my good man. More than happy for you to come and have a chat on here, and you can tell me why I'm wrong. Nothing better than learning why you're wrong, because you learn. But you need to come and talk to me to do it, Tony. That's what I'll say. Anyway, the other big bit of news before we start getting into the fixtures and the games and bits and pieces like that, and we obviously look forward because there's some very, very big games obviously coming up, as Jamie has pointed out in the chat. We have last Saturday evening. Now, as some of you will be aware, if you've read the latest, Banners on the Road, listen to the latest Banners on the Road, because it was an audio special that I did from last Saturday evening between the Solent Junior Devil. The signals dropped there. There we go. Deary me, everything's gone to pot. But yeah, I'm keeping tabs on the other games as I'm tweeting away, as I usually do. And for people who aren't aware, Chris Beale, who does the updates for Streatham, Chris and I have known each other a long time, and ultimately, Chris and I know I know Chris, and I know Chris tries to always do updates in as calm and reasonable a way as he possibly can. And so Streatham versus Chelmsford, and it's a cup game. And I say to myself, right, this is going to be an interesting game. Let's see what happens. 1 minute in, Josh Martin is kicked out of the game for running a guy. Definitely not good. And it escalates, and there's more stuff. There's fights, and then there's more, and then there's more, and then there's more. One of the rest of his family are caning the bandwidth. It's only my wife, and it potentially is her. But no idea what's kind of going on. I'm Victor. What am I talking about? I'm having an absolute mare tonight, folks. Oh dear. Really sorry, everybody. Really, really sorry. Definitely not our best show so far. Tech has gone to pot. I have no idea what's going on. what we're going to do for a second, we're just going to do this. I'm going to pause this show for a second, and I'll be back. So bear with me a second, everybody. And we're back. Right, figured it out. The wife, it's my wife. It's my wife as well trying to use the internet in the house, and it's caving all the bandwidth. It is what it is. Really, really sorry to have to pause the show midway. Right, Invicta, not Chelmsford, one team southeast of London. But yeah, Streatham and Invicta obviously having a little bit of a set to as a result of what happened on Saturday evening. But yeah, the game starts, and I'm keeping tabs on the updates, and it just goes from. It just becomes more and more and more and more. And then we get to the end of the first period and it all just breaks down. And the fact there was a brawl at the end of the period, given how tempestuous the first had been, not a big surprise. Then it all goes really silly. Invicta refused to come out. That was a problem. And ultimately, what ended up happening, if you're not aware, is that this game between Streatham and Invicta is just abandoned at the end of the first. And 183 minutes of penalties, I want to say, if I've counted correctly, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, Joe Scutts will appear momentarily and tell me, because that's what we all rely on Joe for, is his accuracy and the like. But the ultimately. Crazy stuff as we see on the high road. Now, the fact that game has been abandoned is not good. The fact it got so out of hand that there was a massive brawl at the end of a period. These things happen in hockey, and hockey is a game of aggression and frustration, and there is an element of physical violence that we accept as being part of this community that happens in this game, and it happens from time to time. I've watched brawls happen. I think every one of us who's watched this show, if we've been at a game, although if you haven't in the chat, if you've not seen a brawl, that happens. Penalties are handed out, and you carry on. Now, Invicta have gone down the lines of claiming about player safety and have said we're not coming back out. I think the issue that I have here is twofold. And I say this with every bit of respect towards Invicta, because obviously, we are in a new era when it comes to kind of player safety. And I don't mean the NIHL DOPS, which, as we all know, a little bit awkward at the moment. But I mean in terms of, in the post Adam Johnson world as we are. Our game comes with inherent risk. Our game comes with elements of physicality to it, and brawls happen. They shouldn't happen, but they do. One team does not brawl with itself, and I think that's probably my issue here, is that Invicta, especially for the fact we can respect Invicta, and of course following his actions, Josh Condren has been released by the Dynamos after video showing him, by the looks of it, very clearly hitting JJ Pitchley in the face with a stick. Away from, not in an accident as a play, stood still, and Pitchley, and let's not forget, JJ Pitchley got sucker punched by I forget which of the Bartlett brothers it was, but that's another whack to the face that JJ Pitchley has taken this season. Not in a hockey play, off the puck and not expecting what's going on, whilst play has been stopped. And I can credit Invicta for doing that. I struggle with the notion of pulling the entire team off the ice, claiming safety, when they have just as much participated in what happened as Streatham did. Now, I saw somebody say, well, Invicta have released Condren, who are Streatham going to release? With all due respect, and you don't have to like Streatham, many people don't. Streatham are a very, very physical team, and that physicality rubs people up the wrong way. But Streatham didn't use a weapon to hit someone in the face. Streatham did stuff that, within the context of ice hockey, we accept as something that is there. And that is where I struggle with this. I genuinely feel Invicta should have found a way to continue this game. I understand why they didn't. Why they chose not to is their prerogative. And what their punishment is going to be for forfeiting is going to be interesting. But that obviously remains to be seen at the moment. I can see I see Tom in the chat. The problem is, if they aren't punished for forfeiting the game, they're setting a precedent where teams can walk off because they feel the officiating is poor. And I'm in no way a Streatham fan. You definitely aren't. I genuinely question whether they as a club would have been as worried about their safety if that game had been played in front of a packed out rink in Gillingham. And then, of course, the oddity was that both teams went and then played the following night in Gillingham, and Streatham steamrolled the Dynamos. Guys missing as well because of the previous night. So it's a very, very odd situation. And maybe it's one that I need to sit down with Carl Lennon and maybe see whether he wants to do an interview about this, because I think there's some questions to be asked on both sides of this. Now, Stratman and Invicta do, of course, have previous. Over the years, Jamie McElroy, of course, even the fact he's chasing penguins down in the South Atlantic still popped his head above the parapet to talk about his story of jumping into the Invicta bench. But the point still stands. You've got to try and complete the game. Invicta were short bench from the start. Not sure after all the penalties they would have had many players left. Now, if they had to forfeit due to lack of numbers, they should have said that. But that's not the language they've used. They've talked about player safety. I get if they thought that the officiating was not managing the game well. That's a conversation to have off the ice after you've cleared everything up from that brawl at the end of the first, to sit down and actually, I'm not to try and second guess the official in this one because it's a hard job. But if you've got that, one of the things I'd be interested to see is what officials would think about this, because sitting down with both coaches after that and just going, right, pack it in. You've blown your gasket, a lot of you. We've got 40 minutes more of hockey that we need to get played here. You two need to control your benches and you need to do it properly now, or my report's going to, you're already going to be in trouble for the fact you've had the benches go. It's going to get worse from here. I will call absolutely everything and make your life a misery. I'm really interested to hear some perspective from some officials on that. I think, like I say, the big problem for me is that just walking out of the game achieves nothing, especially to then go, we've drawn a line under last night. Well, that's great, where everybody turned up and you gave them 20 minutes on the road and then played 60 minutes at home and then got thumped at home. It's really easy for all of us from the outside to look at that situation and just go, they shouldn't have done that, they shouldn't have done this. And I've obviously ventured an opinion. I'm obviously interested to hear yours in the chat. But, like I say, the big thing for me, you should find every possible way to finish a game. Walking off after 20 minutes, and you're only 1-0 down as well. It's not like Invicta were getting smacked around or anything like that. For me, like I say, Tom has mentioned there, and I think he does. I think it sets a dangerous precedent where teams can, walk out on a game, and it's money people have paid to turn up. Yes, it's money that you as clubs are paying to your players, whether it's even in expenses or just sticks or like a $5 for a pint of beer afterwards. But everybody's money has kind of sort of disappeared into a black hole here, off the back of sort of feeling. And there is an obligation by signing up to this league to play the games that are in it. You don't have to like how it goes. You don't have to like the results. If people walked off because they didn't like the results, MK Thunder would walk out of every game every week in South One. And so I suppose that's my offer to both Streatham and Invicta as well. If you want to explain it to me, come explain it to me. I'm more than happy to have that conversation. I've of course not gone chasing after Invicta this week. I've let them have their space and I've let them say their piece. But yeah, I think that the question again I would ask out loud is, like, how do we know this can't happen again? Was it quite a big crowd in Streatham on Saturday? Decent for Streatham, I think. There was certainly what I found very interesting as well, and this will be one for the people who like the fights. But there was a tweet I saw from somebody who said it was their first ever game of ice hockey, and that's what they got. And they said, "It's a shame we only got 20 minutes, but I want to come back." What does that tell you about sometimes how the madness grips us all a little bit? I also don't want to speak too soon, just because I've noticed that the stream has been a little bit more cooperative. Oh dear. It's definitely not been our best show so far, folks. But what we will do, he says, desperately hoping that this is going to work in a minute. Cross your fingers, cross your legs, cross your eyes, cross your T's, cross the whole 9 yards, and let's see if we can get this to work. Of course. I'm going to press this button. And hope it has not immediately dropped and gotten worse. So we'll hopefully keep rolling along with that. But let's look at some results from last weekend. And it was under the Friday night lights last weekend for the Solway Sharks and the Leeds Knights on Friday night up in Dumfries. It goes all the way to the shootout, but the Solway Sharks pull it out. Mason Alderson Biddulph with an absolutely superb shootout winner to do that one. Sorry, Chris, I've just seen that in the chat. When did Docs release their outcome? I'm expecting it either Thursday or Friday. Certainly the clubs should be told tomorrow, I think, but it'll be interesting to see when the clubs kind of make an announcement about that. But yeah, so Mason Alderson there with the big shootout winner. Great performance in that as well from Curtis Warburton. And the Knights drop a point in Dumfries. The Sharks have been on a pretty decent roll as of late, and they then double it up with an absolute fire sale down in Bristol. A back and forth tie. The third game in a couple of weekends between the Pitbulls and the Sharks. But this one goes all the way to overtime, and the Sharks, well, you can call them not necessarily a hammerhead, not necessarily a great white. It's a cardiac shark. They don't do things the easy way, Martin Grubbs boys. But Scott Henderson with the overtime winning goal on the power play. The Sharks finish off the weekend on Saturday night with a 4-point weekend out of their 2 games, and a superb performance by them on that front. Another decent win for the MK Lightning, of course. The title charge very much still on for Tim Wallace's group. A 6-3 win for them over the Telford Tigers. And of course, I've seen there on Tom from has mentioned it in the chat. Saturday at the Link was one of the dullest games I've seen this year. Sunday was one of the craziest. Funny old game. Although Peterborough didn't exactly cover themselves in glory. But certainly a crazy one on Saturday evening. A 9-4 win for the Swindon Wildcats. The Bees against the Bees. The Bees were up early in this, young as a whole Seahawk. But the Seahawks get the win down in Romford against the Raiders. 6-5 in regulation as well. A big 2 points there for for Matty Davis's side. And then the demise of the current sort of demise on ice of the Steel Dogs continues apace. A 7-1 win for Peterborough in Sheffield against the Steel Dogs there. Another one-sided affair, unfortunately, for Stevie Weeks' side. We're going to head into Sunday, and the Bees back to winning ways. Some early issues against the Raiders, but the Bees come out with a 5-3 win, and a first win in a first proper start for Brett Shepherd, deputising for Britton Priest in this one. A great result for that young man there. And then the Lightning, they fluff their lines against the Seahawks again. Hull beat MK another time this year. I think to the point now, off the top of my head, I think the Seahawks have got the tiebreaker over MK. They certainly do already, but I think this basically means that the Seahawks can't really fall behind on that one, which is massive for Hull come the end of the season. The Pitbulls, again, they get another 5 goals, but they still can't find a way to win. They lose 7-5, really testing the Leeds Knights up at the Castle. But the Knights are relentless. We absolutely knew it, and they don't let up at all. The Swindon Wildcats then, Tom has mentioned that Sunday was a pretty crazy game. A 9-5 win to another 9 goals. 18 goals in 2 games. Of course, we move into the fixtures for this upcoming weekend. We're starting on Friday, where we have one in the league, in terms of the Leeds Knights and the Telford face-off at the Castle. And then we are into Cup semi-final action. The Swindon Wildcats and the MK Lightning do battle in the first leg of their semi-final tie. A huge game, especially for the Cats as well, where they've had to play so many games recently, catching up desperately. And now, I mean, there's no such thing as a bad Cup semi-final to make, but an extra game to play, especially as well, given that they are back home the next night as well. But should be a fascinating game, this one, as the first leg, as the Cup semi-finals get underway. Saturday then, the 20th of January, plenty of action as well, a pretty full docket of games here. The first one facing off at 5:30 at the world's most versatile arena. The Bees have the long journey up towards the East Riding. The Hull Seahawks will welcome Dom Gibai's side there. 6:30pm face-off in Swindon for the Wildcats and the Telford Tigers. 7pm face-off in Bristol. The Bristol Pitbulls will look for a measure of revenge against the Leeds Knights, having lost at the Castle last weekend. And at the Thunderdome, the MK Lightning take on the Raiders. A 7:30pm face-off for the Sheffield Steel Dogs. Can they get back to winning ways or get anything at all against a decent-looking Solway Sharks side? We then move into Sunday, the 21st. It's a 5pm face-off at the Hangar for the Bees and the Seahawks. A 4pm face-off in Dumfries. The Solway Sharks and the Sheffield Steel Dogs going home and home this time around. 5:15 at Sapphire Ice and Leisure for the Raiders and the MK Lightning. 5:30 Peterborough versus Bristol. And a 6pm face-off. It's Sunday, of course it's a 6pm face-off. It's Telford, and they will return the favour to the Swindon Wildcats. A 3-3 for Aaron Nell's side this coming weekend. What we'll do then, of course, is we'll just have a quick squiz at the tables. As we're aware, the Cup semi-finals, like we say, got the first leg of MK and Swindon this coming Friday. The first leg of Leeds and Hull will be on January the 31st in Hull, and then the quick following up with the second leg on the 2nd of February in Leeds. That second leg of MK and Swindon will take place on the 8th of February. We then look at the league table itself. Results, of course, going the way of the Knights, even though they drop a point against Solway in the shootout. The Knights now 3 points clear, 53 from 31, MK 50 from 32, meaning the Knights, of course, have a decent commanding position there. Swindon pulled themselves up very handily into third place, 44 from 31. 2 games in hand over Peterborough, who have 39 from 33. Hull, well, how will the Owen Sobchuk era at the world's most versatile arena go? We'll find out hopefully this week. He's due to play on Saturday. 37 from 31 for the Seahawks. A 5-point gap for them ahead of the Telford Tigers, who have 32 from 31. Solway occupying a 7th spot, 29 from 33. The Raiders in 8th with 27 from 33. The Bees, 26 from 32, so potential for them to still steal back that last playoff spot. Sheffield, 22 from 32. Bristol, 18 from 33, sees them holding up the table at the moment. It's 3-1 Hull with 1 to play. So Hull have won the tiebreak against MK. Crazy to think, especially when you think of last year and just how battered around Hull got at times. That's what they've managed to do this year. Massive testament to the ability that for what Matty Davis has been able to do in terms of bringing guys in. But what remains to be seen is now Sobchuk is coming in with this big change, particularly to the top 6, and what is a guy brought in to do scoring work. Will the Seahawks be able to press on and be a bit more consistent, win more games in a row? Can they beat Leeds? That's the big question, of course. That does remain to be seen. Well, then squiz down to our friends in North 1. Of course, everybody back rocking and rolling after the Christmas break. Not massive amounts of games, and of course, we did have one mild issue. The fact that Deeside and Blackburn did not meet in the M56 Cup. Deeside not travelling because of the ongoing police investigation into the issues from Sunday the 7th. But games across the board, and another win at home for the Hull Jets. They beat the Sheffield Scimitars by 4-2. The Scimitars, of course, battling for that last playoff spot, and Hull, well, they've been pretty decent at home all year. I wonder how much better they'd be with Jack Brammer in the side. Maybe they went away from home more. A big win for Widnes. They managed to upset the apple cart a little bit for the Solihull Barons. Solihull have been chasing down Billingham quite handily, but they slip up on Merseyside, and a good and a much needed win in the playoff race for Joe Coulter and his band of what is now essentially Scottish teenagers by the look of it. Sunday then, it was the big game of the weekend in North 1, and the Stars keep rolling along. They demolish Whitley again, a 6-1 win for Stephen Foster's side at the Forum, and a 4-point weekend for Widnes, a 5-2 win over Deeside in North Wales. Another slip up there. A decent weekend for those looking for results from the bottom end of the table. However, a win for Blackburn keeps them on pace in terms of the title race. It's a tough one for them in Nottingham against the Lions, but the Hawks get the 3-2 win in regulation. Another game without points out of it for the Lions. And it's going to be even tougher for Nottingham this upcoming Saturday. They have to travel up to the Forum and Billingham. That one could be very, very, very painful for Matt Bradbury's side. Elsewhere on Saturday, no confirmed face-off time in the M56 Cup between Widnes and Blackburn. Solihull take on Deeside in the league at Hobbsmoat Road. That's a 6:30pm face-off. Sunday the 21st then, a big game at the top of the table in Lancashire. Blackburn and Billingham has the potential to steal the weekend in terms of high quality hockey there. Elsewhere, 5:10pm face-off at Ice Sheffield for the Scimitars and the Barons. Whitley host Deeside. That could be a very, very tasty little game itself. And a 5:30pm face-off on Merseyside. The Widnes Wild against the Hull Jets. A good weekend for Widnes last weekend. Can they build on that result against the Hull Jets side that has struggled on the road all year so far? Cup permutation still not 100% worked out in North 1. As we can see, the final team still not confirmed, but we can see that it's pretty much going to be it's pretty much going to be either Hull or Deeside when it comes down to it as to who will end up facing Billingham for the most part. Plenty of exciting hockey left to come there in that cup, but like I say, Solihull and Blackburn either way is going to be a superb tie. The dates of that have come out. They're on the Hawks social media. Billingham still, of course, await their opponents. And when we look at the actual table itself, it's still all eyes to the north. Officially, 3 teams now already qualified for the playoffs by their scoring. Billingham, of course, top of the table, 36 from 21. Solihull, 32 from 22. Deeside, 29 from 22, and already playoff qualified in January. Blackburn then, 26 from 21. That game against Billingham could really do them some good in terms of pushing their way further up the table. Whitley 25 from 23. Hull 25 from 21, but as you can see, only 2 wins on the road all season. Drop down then to Widnes, of course, their 4-point weekend, helping them massively, 17 from 23. Sheffield and Nottingham then both tied on 8 points. The Scimitars have only played 21 games and hold the tiebreaker over their rivals from the NIC. So it's just having a squiz. Of course, do keep chucking those comments and questions into the chat, and we'll keep having a look at what's going on as we go along. I've pressed down too far, but yeah, not tons and tons of games. As you can see, it was the Britain Cup between Streatham and Invicta, so not a league fixture. This sort of extra competition that they've been running, and well, nobody's told Joe, so Joe doesn't have an answer to that one. But the one game in the league, a tight-fought affair at the Hangar. The Oxford City Stars pushing hard, but just can't quite get it over the line. The Slough Jets keep rumbling along as they look to really, really pressure Streatham in the league. A 4-2 win for Lucas Smittel's side on the night. More games than on Sunday, and well, Streatham and Invicta managed to put differences aside to at least complete the league fixture, but it's a comfortable win for Ben Painter's side. 8-3, the Dynamos walloped at home. Milton Keynes losing 4-0 to Slough made me feel incredibly old. For those of you unaware, it saw the senior debut of Connor Dudley in net for the last couple of minutes of this game. Brett Matty has basically been the number one for Slough, where he's out injured at the moment. Rory McGibbon has taken over, and Connor Dudley has been backing up. Connor has come through, came through the Bison Juniors into the Bees, and has been with the Jets since the Jets Juniors since the fold, since the closure of Bracknell. But very, like I say, obviously a massively proud moment for his parents, Nick and Sharon, who I'm friends with. I remember Connor first coming to hockey. I remember Connor deciding to play, deciding to be a netminder. Him and his dad dropped off stuff for my son when he was born. So I feel like a very, very old man reading about Connor making his senior debut at 16. But I'm one of those things where there's just a little nugget of pride in that young man, because even from the outside I can tell he's worked really, really hard to do that. So it's really, really nice to see somebody come from walking in and falling in love with the sport to starting to skate to playing the sport, and he's now getting this opportunity. I'm just going to be really, really happy about that. A 0-point weekend though for the Oxford City Stars against the Chelmsford Chieftains. Another decent performance from the Stars, but they just can't find a way to score enough goals. 4 goals in 2 games is very rarely going to win your fixtures across the weekends here. A comfortable win in the end, albeit a slightly tough one. 5-2 is a decent enough win though for Lewis Clifford's side. And then the Solent Devils, who had been doing pretty well recently, but they managed to slip up and they can't find their way past this Romford Buccaneers side, who are determined to ruin everybody's day. A 5-4 shootout win for the Bucks at Sapphire, which is great. Which is obviously great for them. They love nothing more than giving folks some bloody noses. There is only one game this upcoming Saturday in Division 1 South, and it is an absolute title implications. It is a doozy. 6:30 at the Hangar, Slough versus Streatham. This one could be absolutely massive in terms of where the title ends up. If Slough win, it's obviously still advantage Streatham given the fact that they've got so many games in hand, but finding a little notch in the armour that you can break through, this could be massive mentally for Slough, particularly with things like the Cup and the playoffs on the horizon. Decent sized docket though on Sunday. Chelmsford host Milton Keynes at 6 p.m. at the Riverside. 5:45 down in Kent for the Invicta Dynamos and the Romford Buccaneers. 6:15 at the Ox Pens. Oxford versus Slough. Can they get a measure of revenge for last week? And the Redhawks take on the Solent Devils. 6:45 p.m. on the High Road. We'll do North 2 then before I start talking about my experience last week in South 2. He says pressing the buttons to hopefully make the stats come up. There we go. And as you can see, not a massive raft of games, but sevens all round on Saturday. It was like an episode of Strictly Come Dancing. A good win for the Billingham Buccaneers against the Kingston Sharks. Obviously, the Bucks, after the newer sides in North 2, definitely had the better start to life in North 2. However, obviously the Buccaneers have had a few issues this year, but have recovered well from that and have really pressed on since their sort of issues with not finishing games. 3 games in a row they didn't finish. But a 7-1 win over Kingston, just what the doctor ordered. And then the league-leading Telford Tigers with a 7-0 shutout win against the Bradford Bulldogs. I'm fully expecting Karen to appear in the chat and give us the lowdown on that game momentarily. Oh, press the wrong button there. Sunday then, just the one game. And well, if you like goals, I mean, there were 14 goals on Saturday across 2 games. 15 goals across 2 games, and then 14 goals across 1 game. A massive, massive win for the Sheffield Titans. They condemned the Nottingham Lions 2 to yet another loss, 11-3 at Sheffield. The Lions, though, will have a chance to rebound next week. It's a 1:20 p.m. face-off against the Bradford Bulldogs on Saturday. The Tigers 2 are in action against the Sheffield Titans. I venture one of these sides is not going to score 11 goals in that game. The Billingham Buccaneers host the Sutton Sting. The Sting, of course, one of the teams really putting pressure on Telford at the top, even though the Tigers are still comfortably sitting atop League 2 at the moment. That's 5:30 at the Forum. 5:30 as well in Bradford for the Bulldogs and the Aces. Big issue, of course, for the Aces, the Aces and the Buccaneers. Of course, that game that they were due to play last weekend cancelled because of ice conditions in Altrincham. That would have decided who has the last spot in the North 2 Cup. We await to see what happens in terms of that game. Other game on Sunday, the Kingston Sharks take on the Sheffield Titans at 5:30 p.m. at the world's most versatile arena. In terms of Sunday, a week off for the Coventry NIHL Blaze. If we look then to the North 2 table. Oh, I have no idea what I've pressed there. I thought it was working, and then it stopped working. We don't like that. I mean, of all the tech issues I was having today, this is probably not the worst one to have. So we'll let that load up, he says, hopefully. Is this going to load? There it is. It is going to load. There we go. So yes, in terms of the cup then, as we can see, Telford's still without an opponent, but we do know it'll be Sutton versus Coventry. Those games to be played across that spare weekend that has been set aside for Division 1 and Division 2 cup games, the 27th and the 28th of January. So we'll see those ones. The 27th at the Sky Dome, I believe, 28th at Sheffield. In terms of the Division 2 table then, as we can see, Telford still comfortably atop at the moment. 20 games played, 38 points, just the one loss all season so far. Sutton, 37 from 22, have a 4-point gap over the Coventry Blaze, who have 33 from 22. And then, of course, it's pretty much everybody playing catch-up who will get the 4th spot. Billingham hold it at the moment, 23 from 21. Sheffield, 22 from 21 after their big win on Sunday. They've got a decent 6-point gap over Altrincham, who have 16 from 19. So a couple of games in hand for the Aces there. Bradford 13 from 20. Kingston 6 from 22. And the Nottingham Lions have 3 points from their 19 games played. And given the fact they've not won a game at home all season and they have Telford this weekend, I'm not immediately envisioning that is about to change. Bradford very short benched and missing their top 2 scorers, but defended well. I thought. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Karen. Obviously, a very, very tough weekend for them. No one wants to going into Telford against that Tigers 2 side is no mean feat whatsoever. Saturday then, we'll talk about the game I was at in a minute, but of course quite a full, as you can see, quite a lot of games there on Saturday. A decent win for the Cardiff Fire, their longest trip of the season. They travelled all the way across to Chelmsford and came away with a 6-1 win, which is, makes that long bus journey back a little better. Another humdinger at Alexandra Palace. These two sides played through into overtime in Basingstoke the other week. And unfortunately for the Buffalo, this time they do lose in regulation, but a 2-1 win. The Buffalo are going to hope that they can have found a few gaps in the defence of the Huskies, because that is a potential Cup semi-final opponent. The Huskies, though, will be very, very happy with a win in front of their fans. Elsewhere on Saturday, a 7-3 win for the Invicta Mustangs over the Peterborough Phantoms. Another bad loss for the Phantoms. Starting National Division backup Tyler Delapertouche, but given the fact the Phantoms travelled so short-benched, it was a tough ask of anybody. The other game as well, and if it wasn't bad enough, both Streatham sides ending up in a brawl, albeit the Streatham Blackhawks did at least make it to the end of the game in this one. A 9-5 win for the Oxford Rising Stars of the Ox Pens, but expect suspensions potentially to come from back. Of course, we saw them lose in Gosport against the Solent Devils, but they do get the 4-point weekend this time, winning the London Derby, comprehensively beating Streatham 8-1 on the high road. And then there it is. Finally, after all these years, getting to see the Lee Valley Lions. They do go down by 7-1 against the Solent Junior Devils. Like I said, though, this is one of those things for me where I like the fact that I have been able to go to the very, very top of British hockey this year, and I've commentated on a game in a full rink in the Elite League, 2,000 plus people, and I was at this game as well, and you know what? It was just a big lesson out of this. I feel like Patrice Evra. I love this game. And it does not matter. There is beauty, there is greatness, there is entertainment, there is enjoyment from the top to the bottom. And you know what? Lee Valley didn't deserve, they were not good enough to win this game. But watching a team put all its effort in, they came up short. There's no other way to describe it. They're not as good as Solent. But they put every ounce of effort they had into this. And it was great to watch it. I'm officially as well on the Tadja Allen bandwagon. Loved that kid. Really loved watching him play. Does need to learn to pass the puck a bit more. But you can get the full lowdown on that game over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. We, of course, then looked very quickly to the weekend. No face-off time confirmed at the moment between the Chelmsford Warriors and the Guildford Phoenix. But given Peterborough slipped up last weekend, and given the game we're about to look at, this is a massive chance for the Phoenix to really put some headway, because Alexandra Palace, 5:30pm this Saturday, Haringey, Peterborough, huge implications for the title location in South 2. Invicta, after their big win over Peterborough, well, they get Lee Valley at 5:30 down in Gillingham. On the High Road, it's a 6:45 p.m. face-off with the Streatham Blackhawks and Oxford Rising Stars. Hopefully they don't come to blows again this time. Bristol back in action though this coming Sunday at 4:15 p.m. face-off over at Cribbs Causeway. They take on the Invicta Mustangs. It's a battle of the same fate. It remains to be seen. Who would you like to see the Buffalo play in the semis? Phantoms 2 or the Huskies? I'd actually quite like them to play Phantoms 2, purely for the fact Buffalo Huskies final, I think, is the great chance for the redemption story for the Buffalo, and also making the Huskies play a cup final in Bay. Right, let's see if we can get this working again. This has been an absolute disaster of a show. Can we get anything to work? We can, just about. There we go. So yeah, still not confirmed who will finish top of that Eastern group. But that, of course, will be decided by the upcoming game this weekend. So we'll see who will finish up there. But we know that Guildford and Basingstoke are set in their places in the Western Cup group. The table, though, looks like this currently. Haringey, top of the table at the moment, officially qualified for the playoffs as a result. 26 points from 15 games for the Huskies. But Guildford lurking behind them. Peterborough played 15 games and have 22 points. Guildford have played 11 games and have won the lot. They are very, very much still in the driver's seat. 4 games in hand. Only 4 points behind. It's the Phoenix are still lurking there with intent. Bristol in 4th place then, 21 from 17. Basingstoke 19 from 16. Cardiff 16 from 15. Invicta 14 from 14. And Solent, given their win at the weekend, of 10 from 13. Though of course they've got potential to go higher, but they are the playoff spots at the moment. Outside the playoffs at the moment, then Streatham 8. I really do not know what has gone wrong tonight. It's quite frustrating to try doing a show like this. I'm really sorry, folks. I know there's always a little bit of lag. I know there's always a little bit of this, that and the other. But it's really... I just do not know. I just don't know what has caused all the problems tonight, unfortunately. Bit of a frustrating one. Not quite as frustrating as when everything broke and I had to run the thing off of my... I had to run it off my phone. Although we made that show work. We did make that show work, obviously. So definitely not ideal on that one. But there we go. Every single match across the entirety of the National Ice Hockey League structure. All 5 divisions. We've talked about the whole lot. We've gone through the fixtures. We've gone through the tables. That means the door is open, ladies and gentlemen. What would we like to talk about? If anybody has any great ideas as to how to make my internet work better, that'd be really appreciated. But free reign, ladies and gentlemen. What should we talk about? Questions, comments, thoughts and feelings, chuck them all in the chat. Let's have a little bit of a natter and see if we can get bits and pieces to work. Because I'm just going to quickly as well see what news we've got. Is there any news quickly whilst we've been on the air chatting away, trying to murder the technology for getting on our nerves? Who's your ISP? I want to know who to avoid. I think probably the issue is, like I said, I think unfortunately my wife is streaming a film next door. I normally, Dave, don't have this many issues. People will attest that there's always a little bit of a wonky wobble. Streaming just does that from time to time, but this is bad. This is bad even for us. Talk clearly causing problems, it seems. Although I don't seem to be having any issues with any of my other devices, so it might just be the fact I'm just overpowering. I'm trying to ask my laptop to do a bit too much, as it were. I'll have a fiddle with the settings, I think, between shows, and let's see what we can kind of make happen on that front. Not much. Sometimes we have lots of news happen during the show, and it really has to keep us on our toes. But it seems to be, touch wood, a bit of a quieter night. Guildford 2-1 up on Coventry after 2 periods. So thank you very much for that, Jamie. That's appreciated. I saw Andrew Day chucked in that was the same score at the end of the first. So he's having a quick let's just have a quick look at that one as to who's actually got the goals. In that one, Matt Tugnut, another goal for Matt Tugnut and one for Matt Alvaro for the Flames. James Shearer with the goal for the Coventry Blaze. What cup games are you going to see when they arise? I think it kind of depends who's playing whom, where, and when. That weekend of the 27th and 28th, like I say, if you look at the fixtures for the 27th and 28th, there's no games current for the most part scheduled in any of the divisions outside of the national, because that weekend has been kept clear for cup games, and then obviously teams not in the cup semi-finals, stuff has been scheduled around. I know, for example, Oxford are taking on Milton Keynes in South 1 that weekend. So I'm waiting to see what happens. I'm waiting to make sure everything's kind of clarified. Then we'll kind of make a decision. Would I like to go see a cup semi-final game in Basingstoke? Definitely. Would be fun. Would be very, very interested as well to see either Peterborough or Haringey again. I believe Sam is injured though, Jamie. I don't think he's a scratch in that sense, but would be very, very frustrating if he is purely being scratched off that basis. But I was under the impression that he was hurt, because he's not been on the roster the last couple of times I've commentated either. So it would be pointless of Guildford to keep him sat there for no reason. Yes, 20 minutes to go in at the Spectrum. Obviously not commentating on every game for Guildford this year, but we will see what happens for the rest of this year on that one. Generally, if they need a man to call, I will get a call. So I will see whether I'm back in Guildford at all this year. But of course, always happy to, if I'm not elsewhere, I think I'm available. I think is probably the thing I kind of say to teams at the moment if they want me to try something. Always happy to have a go at stuff. But yeah, Sam Talbot has been a bit of a frustration, I think, in that sort of sense, because we saw just how ridiculous he was in the National Division last year, and it just doesn't quite feel necessarily that he's been used to his full potential, I think is probably the best way to describe it this year. We're sort of seeing with guys, you give them the ice time, you give them the opportunities, they will do well. But Sam's suffered it from a little bit, and like I say, as far as I'm aware, he's hurt, so that's been an issue for him in Guildford. Zane McKenzie, of course, is not seeing tons of ice time in Nottingham, and you worry about some of these young Brits who are kind of what is being expected of them at elite league level, where what role are they wanting them to do, but you still got to give them ice time to show they can do something, otherwise it's a bit pointless. Pride Week starts this Sunday till the 28th. Yep, lots of Pride jerseys making their appearance. Not seen any that are particularly super eye-catching. It's all very kind of much variants on it's all variants on the theme. But I was kind of hoping there'd be some extra kind of elements of originality per se. But it's all for a great cause. Hopefully, the money kind of raised from the jerseys goes towards things like LGBTQ plus. Awareness organisations, charities, bits and pieces like that, rather than just kind of finding their way into the back pocket fund. But it's the important thing is that it is happening, and the fact that we are saying to people who have historically not been allowed to be themselves authentically in a public space, that actually you are welcome in this public space. I think that's kind of the thing with it. And I think for a lot of people who are of a bit of an older tradition, the people who don't necessarily get why people have to shout about who they are quite so much, especially from the stereotype of British people is that we're reserved and we hold a little bit back. But actually, if you're forced into a position where you are not allowed to be who you are without fear of legal reprisal, violence, disowned by your family, shunned by people who you thought were your friends. And actually, the one thing about hockey is that it's always been a case of whatever happens, especially on the ice, it's next man or woman up. And actually, it's about your ability and it's about your effort and your work ethic. Who you happen to be in love with off the ice isn't a massive issue. And so the idea that we need the fact that, you know, some people sort of say, well, why do we need to talk about it? Well, because it's still a problem. That's why we need to talk about it. And it's not just talking about it today. It's whenever we hear, it's whenever people say something inappropriate. It's whenever people talk about, not quite understanding it. But it's giving people the space to be able to talk about the fact that maybe they don't understand it and educating them in a nice way, or if they say something horrible, by calling them out on it. Now, my sister-in-law is married to a woman, and she is they genuinely are some of I genuinely, because of life and stuff, I genuinely in my life have not met tons and tons of people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or at least not openly so, right? And in that way is something of a bit of an... The thing is, of course, that statistically, I've probably met tons. And I've probably worked with people who've not talked about it. And actually, one of the things that we need to be able to do is to just make sure that people should be all right about being who they are around us. And, I'm just a white guy on the internet who talks. And so I've said before, and I'll say it again, I sit atop a very, very high tower of privilege because of who I am and things that make me inalienably me. But hockey's not just about me. It's not just about you. It's not just about, about one singular individual, right? As a hockey club, you are a team, and that's going to be people with different viewpoints, different perspectives, different upbringings, different thoughts and different feelings. And that's not to say that we have to be tolerant of the intolerant. That's the paradox thereof. But we have to be appreciative of the fact that this space does not belong to one. It belongs to many. And actually the fact that the IHA and the Elite League and across British hockey, we can kind of stand up and say, like, this group of people who we know historically have been looked down upon because of who they love and how they feel, and have legally been discriminated against because of who they are and who they love and how they feel, and actually that they're welcome in. Like, it's not rocket science. Be kind to people. Open your door and say you're as welcome here as anybody else. Because actually, people will sort of say, oh, well, if I don't agree with it, you have to let me in as well. You can change your opinion. You can look at the people that you meet and you can change your opinion as to whether you think it is right or whether what you think is a right or wrong way to be. But people can't change if they're gay. People cannot change if they're bisexual. People spend hours and days and months and years wrestling with it. So let's not get into this kind of thing of lifestyle choices. Because spoiler alert, why would you choose to be something that if you went to the wrong country would get you arrested, jailed, or killed? Think about it. Please think about it. I never trust Paul Dixon to develop young British talent. He does not have the best track record with it. It is probably one of his bigger issues. But I think what he's very, very good at, and especially from an Elite League perspective, is those uncovered gems. His recruitment is not bad on the whole, and he's managed to convince decent, good quality Elite League Brits to go there. Ben O'Connor, very good. Lewis Hook, very good. But bringing guys through, and that's actually something Guildford need to be able to do. It's probably the thing he needs to develop more as a coach, I would argue. And I'd say that to his face, because that's what I'm like. Anyway, folks, it's getting on, and the technology has been utterly dumpster fiery, so I'm actually going to just call it there for tonight. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL. Follow me on my journey across British hockey for the Banners on the Road series, where we go in depth into every game that I get to go to across the course of this season. I'm going abroad in March. I don't know where I'm going because I won this mystery football holiday, but I'm going to try and find a hockey game to go to there as well. That'll be there, as well as our hockey story series, long form pieces of content, both written and audio visual, going into the weird, wonderful and wacky world that is hockey from the 19th century to the present day. behind the Iron Curtain, Into War and Beyond. Players, officials, all the movers and shakers from around the world of hockey, all of that stuff you can find there. The back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast is there as well as our free to download tabletop game, Dice Hockey. You can download it for free and play it with bits and pieces from around your house. All I ask is that if you do download Dice Hockey, please do make the point of trying to chuck a few quid towards Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's and he has Parkinson's dementia, which is crap. And we'd quite like some money for research and a cure. So if you download Dice Hockey and enjoy it, please, £1, £2, whatever you can towards Parkinson's UK, that's brilliant. But there is nearly 13 years worth of stuff over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall if you like getting stuff through your Facebook feed, as some people I know do like to do. Head over, like the page. Everything that goes on the website will come through that. The links to all the What's Current streams will come through that, as well as a few extra bits and pieces that kind of happen too. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, is @BannersOTW. That is the best place to keep up with me and what I'm doing, and you kind of get my rolling commentary of to what's happening in hockey, as well as a few extra sort of special bits and pieces that don't make the website as well. And then of course you can chuck a few pounds if you like into our virtual busking hat, which is buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Of course, with not being in one place this year, my costs have gone up a bit. All the money from that kind of goes into kind of running stuff here. Banners on the Wall is never going behind a paywall itself, but if you like what you see, if you want to help keep the lights on, keep things ticking along, massively appreciated. You can chuck a few quid into the hat at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. But of course, you can read all of that down there in the YouTube description, because we are here on YouTube, the Banners on the Wall YouTube channel, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. throughout the British ice hockey season to cover all things from across the NIHL. But not only that, we've got tons and tons of videos from bits and pieces. My video series with the Solent Devils, the detail in the Devils, new episode coming soon. Alex Murray and myself are trying to decide who we're going to speak to next. We've got a rough idea. We just need to convince that person to sit down and actually do it. But there's interviews with people with different, lots of different NIHL owners. Of course, you can go back, check out my interview with Steve Nell. That's a brilliant interview. That really pleased. He's not done any media outside of club-related media or newspapers attached to cover his teams. So BOTW is the first place that Steve Nell has actually stepped out of his office to kind of speak to, as it were. Tons and tons of other people that we've spoken to as well. Referees, owners, coaches, players. All of that's there on the YouTube channel. But of course, worst case scenario, we're here every Wednesday night for the What's Current stream. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it around, feed the algorithm hamster, as I like to say. Let's keep him good and fat and well fed through the winter. But like I say, worst case scenario, we're back here next Wednesday for the What's Current stream, and you can enjoy all that. I'm really sorry about all the technical issues we've had tonight. The stream dropping in and out, me having to disappear off to try and check what's happening. Not how we like to run things. And maybe I need to go and have a look at some settings. Maybe I need to try some different things as to how I do the show. But I really, really appreciate everybody kind of sticking with it tonight. It's really, really frustrating, I know, when you're watching something and it drops in and out and it drops in and out. But I'm really, really thankful that there's a lot of people who are prepared to kind of to stick with us. And as my friend Scotty Wars would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe. And so long till next time. Not made my mind up where I'm going on Saturday. Tweet me at BannersOTW. Where should I go? I've got some ideas, but I could be persuaded. You let me know. Until then, we'll